Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Leadership Exchange, where we have candid conversations with forward thinking leaders who are shaping the future of business. I'm Jason Zickman, and I'm the CEO of the Alternative Board. Today, I am very excited. We're exploring something fundamental, yet often overlooked in business leadership, and that is what it means to lead with values and how purpose driven leadership can drive lasting impact. Our guest, Jim Liptrot, is deeply principled leader whose career spans engineering, education, and executive leadership. He's led rapid growth. He's mentored future leaders. He stayed grounded in his belief that people, not just products or profits, are what truly sets a company apart. Now, Jim's journey is full of hard earned wisdom, and I mean hard earned. From taking a pay cut to do the work that he believed in, to rebuilding a business that, after a 70% financial hit, to guiding young people who've been left behind by the traditional system. You see, Jim's proof that when you connect deeply with your purpose and you invest in others, you create something far more powerful than just a job. Jim, welcome. Welcome to the Leadership Exchange, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that you're on the podcast today. How you doing?
Thanks, Jason. I'm very good, please, and thank you. And I'm really excited to be talking to you, and really humbled, to be honest, that you've got such interest in me. But anyway,
Well, you shouldn't be. You're a humbled man, but you should not because of this. You should be. I mean, the reality is, folks. I saw Jim speak to a group of business leaders a handful of months back, and he brought the house down with how his passion and his commitment and his beliefs and values help move the business. So I just feel so grateful to have you here today, Jim, to talk about this. So let me ask a couple of questions. You went from an engineer to being a leader. So as you began as an engineer, you were really strong on that technical side. But at that time, you were not yet really strong in managing people. And that transition into leadership has often proven to be very challenging for many of us, especially for those who are used to just solving problems on their own. So what was it? What did you learn in those early days about leading people, and how did it shape the values that you bring to your leadership today? That's an amazing thing to see.
yeah. So I think that my values obviously come from my parents. It's as simple as that. And when I started, certainly as an apprentice in the late 70s and moving into the early 80s, I actually thought I will not be a leader until I'm the best at the job, very naively. But also, I didn't like the way that the managers of the time spoke to people. I didn't like the way they made me feel.
Mm.
So I remember thinking, I'll never be a leader because I can't talk to people in the way they talk to people. So that was a real big influence. And ironically, one of the person that gave me the opportunity was quite an aggressive manager. But I guess my principles and my values came through because in a very early meeting with him, I was extremely forceful in my exchange, but very professional. So not personal, but very strong in my views about how things should be. And the next day I got invited to his office where he told me that they were going to restructure how British aerospace was at the time. And he wanted me to be developed to become the first of a new breed of managers. So he looked at my academic background, and in his words, it was shocking,
Mhm.
but he was very positive about the way I went about things. So he gave me the opportunity in my 30s to go and do an engineering degree, but specified that it should focus on management and leadership also. So that was massive. And then the first role I got was actually over a group of engineers that I had no technical background in. So I actually had to work with the people. But my purpose there was to change the perception of these people because across the factory they had a very, very bad reputation. And I told them very early on that if there were any problems, I would solve them and nobody else would know. But wherever there was positivity, the world and his wife would know. So the only time that we would shine the spotlight on them was for positive reasons, not negative reasons, and we would
Wow.
change the perception.
And that was a completely different experience that they've had prior to you coming in.
Absolutely. And the guy that ran them before me was actually the most experienced person in that discipline.
So you said that earlier. You thought that, being the best at what you did would be the most important thing, but you said that naively so
Yeah,
because
because
you actually
actually,
replaced somebody who was way more competent in the skill set at the time, but struggled in the leadership.
yeah. So the danger is if you are the best, then when there's a problem, you solve it. You don't build on the skills of your team to solve it. So I wanted everybody in that team to absolutely excel. And they
Wow.
would only excel if they felt valued. And for years, they hadn't felt valued.
How long did it take you, Jim, to change the way they felt about it, to trust it? How long, what do you think it was until they realized, this guy Jim's for real?
It was probably a few months, I think, because
Hmm.
I was very, very different to anything that actually existed probably right across the factory at that point. And, there were 5,000 people there, so you can imagine how many sort of frontline managers there were. But I was very different. I know I was.
Yeah.
So if a mistake was made, I put my arm around them so that they knew that I still valued them. And if they'd done some excellent work, I put my arm around them and told them how good they were.
Amazing. It's a special quality in you, Jim. Very special. At organizations that you've led or in lead, you scaled to serve over 10,000 young people who've been left out of the traditional education system and often stepping into a system where that has really let them down. So that's growth and impact. But even more notable is how deeply your leadership remains value driven. So when scaling up quickly, which is not an easy thing to do, it brings its whole other incredible problems. How do you stay anchored in the principles? Because I think when you go with that pace, the way you did, and you have that rapid growth, it's easy to want to or feel like you need to cut corners, but you didn't. So how did you handle that?
So it's a challenge, obviously. And what I will say is the person that's actually led this organisation is my son, who's inherited, without a shadow of a doubt, my values. But when we were setting it up originally, he said to me, we're going to call it obviously life-changing education, and we are going to change the lives of these children, but we're also going to change the lives of our staff along the way. So again, we care very much about our staff. So when we are recruiting, so far, we've involved every member of the staff in the recruitment process.
Mm,
How do we, the way that we keep focused is actually, there's a couple of things that I've learned in the last few years. One of them is the importance of first impressions. So the 4 minute rule, I came across a man from Yorkshire called Steve McDermott who had done this YouTube, and I'm not sure if it was TED Talks, but it was talking about the importance of the 4 minute rule and how an impression is made within the first 7 to 17 seconds. So I believe very much in that. But the other thing that's really helped us, along with the values, has been the virtues of the ideal team player. The Patrick
yep.
Lencioni,
Patrick
humble,
Lencioni.
hungry, and smart. Because you can gauge that very quickly when people aren't in an interview situation. If you were just talking to them, you see the real person.
It's absolutely
So,
true.
so we have made it absolutely clear that we will only recruit people with the right values. The technical skills are secondary. We want real positive role models for our children, our students, and also to support the educators in the schools as well. But the way we do it is literally to focus on those challenges. And I touched on before about putting my arm around people, whether they've done well or they've made a mistake. So what we say clearly to the staff is, if you make mistakes, we'll support you. 100% will support you. We'll champion you when you're making the right decisions. Just don't break the values because
Just
they're
don't break the
non-negotiable.
values.
They are non-negotiable.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And the fact is, you said you bring people into the recruiting process. So I think when you're bringing people on, they don't just hear it as the CEO, speak. They're hearing it from the people in the organization what the values are. So they realize it's really true. And I think that's probably got to be a huge piece of how people realize that you're being serious about those values because they're emphasizing it, I would assume.
Yeah, very much so. But and we've all seen values on walls of companies, but you've got to be seen to be living those values. You've got to be seen to be setting the example. And yes, I'm an invested director with Christian to support him. It's his organisation. But previously, so in the previous roles, I've been able to genuinely say, look, I'm only the same as you. I'm an employee of this company, but I'm paid to do a different role. My role is to care and nurture you. That's
I
it.
think it's amazing. I mean, how you're talking about it, and we all know that we've seen so many businesses that claim to have their values. They even hang them on the wall, and then in the day in day out, it's just not lived. And I've seen it firsthand in our organization where our values, everyone knows and we celebrate and all that. So the fact that you're doing and you're involving your people like that, it's absolutely true. And I'm going to take few pages, tips out of your trick book and start applying them. I think it's going to make a big difference too. You know, you obviously believe in your team and you invest very heavily in that, just with mostly, just as much emotionally as you are with all other ways of going about it. But you said that none of your competition, when we spoke prior, has your people, and that's your edge. So you've already spoke about a couple of things, right? Putting your arms around them and some of the things you said in the culture. But what are some of the things that you think you also do differently when it comes to investing in your team that creates this amazing loyalty and impact that they have? I mean, it's obvious. I mean, you already said a few really powerful things that I think if you did nothing else, it would be still incredibly powerful. But what else might you do?
I do think the difference is you will heard many leaders and managers say, my door is always open.
Yeah.
I never said that. I never said that. My door was always open, and most of the time I were out of the door and I was walking the factory with regularity. I knew my people inside out. I could sit down and write 135 personal Christmas cards without checking HR. I could put in there some comments about a grandparent who might have passed or a baby that's been born or somebody who's done really well at college. I could do that when it came to, I started writing Christmas cards in the October because I had to. And sometimes as we got nearer to Christmas, I'd had to tweak the odd message because something else had happened. But and I sent them, I was questioned, why do you send them through the post? I send them through the post so the family pick them up. So this is not just about you as a person. I know behind you, you've got a lovely family that needs you, and I care about your family as well.
Did you learn this from anybody? How did you come up with these ideas? I mean, this is just, I mean,
I
it's just
don't know,
really,
to
it's
be
really,
honest.
I wrote an article a long time ago, and I think you define it, Jim. Because I used to talk about what is a CEO and all that, and then I came up with the idea that the CEO should be the chief engagement officer, right? I mean, connecting and engaging. But you're talking at a different level. You're like with your team, knowing all of them, engaging with them, and I mean, you really have deeply invested in the people, not just for what they do in the business, but as people themselves, huh?
100%. And yes, I did. I took a significant drop in my package when I left British Aerospace because one of the reasons I felt that our government and probably other governments across the world hadn't invested in their manufacturing infrastructure, particularly the small businesses. And I wanted to make sure that I did my own little bit. I can't change the world, but I can perhaps have an impact on some people, and those companies will probably never know who Jim is anymore. But deep in my heart, I know that there's companies existing now that wouldn't have existed if I'm gone. And I'm not on about Howarth actually. I'm on about other companies who many, many years ago would have closed down, but I know are still thriving now. So it's not just even the families at that point in time, it's the ripples of 20 years ago. Well, their baby now may be working in that company. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's that pebble in the pond, right? All those ripples that it affects you. Sometimes you never ever know what it did, but you know what those values will bring. Amazing, amazing, Jim. There's a story that you shared that really touched me. I thought maybe our listeners would enjoy it, but about a cleaner whose smile and presence set the tone for the whole company.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell,
So,
tell us a little bit about why those
so,
small human moments matter. A
well, if
little
you were
bit about it.
walking in, if you were to walk into a shop and the shop assistant smiles at you and makes you feel welcome, um, I went into a shop the other day and I bought something and I felt really good. And I said, believe it or not, I said to the assistant, I said, you know what, I feel like hugging you. So guess what happened? Not just her, but her pal hugged me as well. And they said, we've had a shocking day, Jim. They knew my name because I'd paid for my goods. But you've just cheered us up. So if you walk in as a client and Michelle greets you with a smile, asks you if you'd like a cup of tea, just what's the impact? So that's the first impression bit. And you ask whether I've been influenced. The ironic thing for me is quite often I've thought, I've done that, but I've not understood the psychology behind it. So as an example, when in when in 2017, December 2017, and I was telling everybody I was going to be the managing director and shaking like a leaf. When I told them that I joined the company because I felt they saved lives, I hadn't heard of Simon Sinek at that point. I found out about him later and I thought, oh, and it's the same with the 4 minute rule. I came across Steve McDermott and the 4 minute rule, and I started to share it with people. So when I've been saying first impressions count, watch this little video, and that will emphasize what I'm on about. And I think it really transformed everything. So it was the first day back in 2019 after Christmas that I brought Michelle and the receptionist at the time into my office, and I told them they were the most important people in the company. And I meant it. I absolutely meant it because they're meeting every client that comes in, whoever walks through that door. So I worked at, believe it or not, I had 12 months helping an online sweet factory set up its warehouse. We had a postman that came in, and I had a shop floor full of Polish and Czechoslovakian, predominantly females. And he would walk in, and the first words out of his mouth would normally be a swear word. So I walked up to him one day with a big smile on my face and said, have you had a tough day? Yeah, I have. So I said, well, these people don't deserve to be spoken like that. I said, but anyway, what's your favourite sweet? He told me his favourite sweet. Wait there. I went away. I got my bag of his favourite sweets. That man never, ever swore again. He never got another pack of sweets either, but he never swore again. So that's,
Fantastic. Look at the way
that,
you turned that around. I mean, that could have been, I was like, where's this going? But it turned around beautifully, right? I
yeah.
love that. Jim, you really are a wealth of just your instinct is so beautiful. So it's funny how you're reading about things like, oh, I've been doing that for a while. Yeah, too bad you didn't write these books, right? It would be a whole different story. So you've mentored a lot of people. And just like you kind of touched on a little bit, who've gone on to lead teams themselves, including someone who's now managing in the same organization that you once led. Right? You mentioned it. What qualities do you look for when someone walks through that door that tell you that they have untapped potential? How do you break that down and get the sniff test to really feel that they have what you feel they need to be successful.
It's different things, really. So one of the people is actually the operations vice president now in America. He emigrated when he was 32, but he was already in the company when I joined. He had one foot out of the door because he wasn't applying himself at college. So it was very frank, radical candor, if you like, of me talking to him and saying, I know you've got the ability. I've looked at your academic background. You've got the ability, but you're not applying it. So I can either double your wage or I can sack you. What do you want? It was very much like that. And he responded very, very well, very, very quickly. So that told me we had somebody who really could go places. I didn't know how far. But I'm more than happy if people pass me on the rails. I'm delighted if they pass me on the rails. And then, the other success story was made the medical technical director at Howarth in the 12 months before I left. And he was the guy that walked in. And as he walked past me at 22, a really smart looking man, first impressions again, smile on his face, just something about him that made me walk past him and up to the then managing director and say, I've seen the new face of Howarth. But it doesn't always have to be young people. My view is that quite often people have been downtrodden. They've been downtrodden at school or they've been downtrodden in previous organisations. So it has to be a fresh start. So a lot of it is how do they respond when they're given the opportunities?
Absolutely.
And some people, I've been thanked many times for the opportunities I've given people, but I thank those people back for accepting and embracing those opportunities. So, yes, there's people internally at Howarth, there's people who've moved on externally at Howarth because Howarth's a small company, so it can't satisfy everybody's ambition. Well, when I was told, when I asked for personal development, that I was going nowhere, my view was, I'll show you where I'm going, but on top of that, I'm going to help everybody I touch achieve whatever they're capable of. And quite often, it will be more than they ever dreamed they could achieve.
So, Jim, really just riffing off of just listening to you here. So you spend so much energy making sure that these others are feeling good, know they're cared for, know they're supported, all these things that have built such a major. Who does that for you? You know, who does that for you? Because we need it too as the leaders of our companies. I always say, put your oxygen mask on first. Where do you get your energy? Who's telling you you're doing a good job? Who's filling your emotional tank?
My family tell me, my mentors tell me, but most importantly, my people tell me as well.
Okay.
And that's incredible that people will actually tell you you're doing a great job when they're in the team. And I remember I'd had a couple of days off sick. I wasn't off sick very often. But I remember walking up the stairs and one of the team, she said to me, Jim, how are you? I said, all right. I said, but you don't realise what that means to me that you've asked. She said, you're very, very important to us.
I
And
love
this was a
that.
person that really didn't show emotions, but she showed them that day. So I think, like anything, when you pour that much in, you also get people that when you're down, they will pick you up as well.
Yeah. I always try to live and teach and preach that, at least at our organization, the Alternative Board, we practice give, ask, receive in that order. And if you do practice give, ask, receive in that order, it does come back. You don't know
Mm.
where, you don't know from whom, but just life seems to be that way. But it's also could be very lonely at the top. So it's important that you surround yourself and you have some good people because your emotional tank is as important as anybody else.
Absolutely, and I understand that.
Yeah.
Which is why, I reached out to look at different peer groups and why I came across Tab at the time. But I would encourage anybody to look at different peer groups and find one for them because it is a lonely place. So, July 18, the owner of the company has made me his managing director because he wasn't sure what I did for his company, his words. I knew he probably wouldn't understand my approach because I know it's very, very different. And particularly when you had a company that previously was very sales focused. And I'm not sales focused, I'm customer focused and people focused. But as we got to July of that year, and I looked at the EBITDA, where the profits were, and it was minus 400,000, I remember thinking, I'll be gone by the end of the year. I've got to get some help, which is when I started to look and when I came across my facilitator, which is Paul Winterbottom. And we were clearly very aligned on values, very aligned. And Paul very kindly took me into his peer group, which was full actually, because Paul didn't, and I assume that perhaps it's a tab model that you don't have more than six on the board. I made it seven, and I wasn't a business owner, which made me almost, when I went onto that board, feeling completely overawed by these people who all own businesses and probably thought in a very different way to me at the time. But Paul's always said, well, I don't take anybody into a board if I don't think they can add something different. And obviously he thought I could add something different. So, but I also at the same time, or just after I'd agreed to join the TAB board, there was an organisation in Britain called Be the Business, it's still going, and they were sponsoring something called Mentoring for Growth, where directors and senior managers from Blue Chip were entering into a 12-month contract with people in my position to support them. I actually gave Be the Business a very hard time because I said, well, I've been in Blue Chip and I can't think of one manager I worked with who would operate in this environment. But I was very lucky they aligned me with a guy called David Miller, who at the time was the commercial director for GSK at the Ulverston site. He'd been there for 30 plus years. But he was so aligned with my values. I remember David speaking to me one day and saying, we want the same, Jim, don't we? We want people to achieve the best they can. But he's got a very different skill set to me in terms of his technical skills. But we are both aligned and Paul's aligned. And so by the end of the year, I wasn't one of one, I was one of nine. And by the end of that year, by December of that year, that minus 400,000 in July was now positive 900,000.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible, Jim. I
No.
mean, and that's by leadership of people. That's changing the way people interacted and worked with. I mean, obviously there's got to be a lot more to it, but that was your recipe, wasn't it?
It was, and communications were massive as well. It's no use not telling people what you need of them and why you need it. But when you start to talk about the impact that these people are having on lives, that every one of their family and friends will be affected by what we're doing, that gives a real focus then.
Sure does. It sure does. I have so many questions. Gosh, I could feel like I could talk to you for hours, Jim. Now, you've said that people should try not to take a job just for the money, that purpose and belief in the work really matter. So that really resonates with us at Tab, where we often see genuinely on a regular basis how much more sustainable a business or career can be when it's grounded in true meaning. In your experience, how do you help others uncover that deeper sense of direction in their work?
So one-to-one discussions quite often. And basically, if they're not happy, well, what makes you happy? What makes you happy? Because you've heard the saying so many times, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Well, I love helping people. And even when the going gets tough, that gets you through because you know how important it is. So I can't go anywhere without asking them why they do the job they're doing. So I love going to my dentist. I must be in the minority.
No
But I
doubt.
remember I remember going to the dentist and they were asking me what I did, and I talked to them about health. I remember saying to the hygienist, "What do you what do you get out of bed for? What job do you do?" "Well, I keep people's teeth clean." "No, you don't. You massively improve my quality of life." And I talked to them about the values. And believe it or not, some people have left that dentist and new people have come in. And they are a fantastic team.
Look at the way you're spreading this everywhere you go. It's amazing. So, you mentioned just a little bit ago about earlier in your career, you spoken to one of your previous bosses, and he essentially told you you're going nowhere
Yeah.
within the firm. And I can imagine that hearing something like that is incredibly hard. But for you, it lit a fuse. It lit a fire. Because we all know that receiving that type of feedback that's hard to get. But it's how we respond to that feedback that matters. So when you heard that, what was it that shifted in that moment that has now shaped the way how you invest in people today?
Well,
Particularly because everything you're doing is so intimate in such a way. Just curious that
yeah,
was a pivotal moment for you, was it?
well, it was one of the pivotal moments. So to start with, I've got a steal within me. I'm also a winner. I don't like losing. So that was part of it. When he spoke to me, I'd been in charge of that team, my first team for nearly 5 years. He also told me I had a good set of lads. Now, these were the same team that were broken. And when I say broken, I mean leaving dead rodents in each other's vices, leaving used tea bags in each other's drawers. And they were now, he was telling me they were a good team. What had changed? So it didn't matter what anybody said to me. My confidence was sky high. I knew I could build teams. I knew what I'd done outside of work with my contribution to the community and helping pick a school up off its knees to be the best performing school in the locality, from it being one of the worst performing schools because it wasn't invested in. So nobody were going to stop me. Didn't matter what they said. Well, if you're not going to help me, I'll help myself and I'll find a way around it.
And it's changed the way you lead others now, doesn't it?
It's took me to another level.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
don't think it changed me because I'd led in that way. But the problem is people don't always recognise what I'm doing because actually it's all done. I don't. I'm telling you, I've written 135 Christmas cards, and I have. And the people within Howarth who got used to it know that I've written them. But other companies wouldn't know, would they? Because they don't go saying, "By the way, I've written all these Christmas cards." But when you ask me, what is it that makes a difference? Well, things like that make a massive difference.
Absolutely, Jim. Yeah, you're not looking for it to be precocious about it. You do it because you believe it's the right thing to do. And that's also what makes you amazing because they realize that you're not doing it for the cameras or doing it for the article. So, you've also shared that you have dealt with a financial crash and your business was slashed by 70% at one point.
Yeah, so
That that
I was a manager in the company at that time,
yeah.
2009. Overnight, the company went through administration. We went down from 120 plus to 30 people.
So, so how do you but when that happens, that's a huge impact to a company. How did you persevere through that? What was it that got you driving through that big challenge to help others who you knew were in some of the darkest times as well for them? How do you lead through that?
Well, you lead through that by rolling your sleeves up and talking to the team, telling them that we can get this company back up and running. And if we do it right, we will bring some of our ex-friends back that have lost their jobs. We'll create a company that allows them to come back. But we'll only do that if we work collectively as a team. So it wouldn't have happened. Well, it may have happened if we'd have found another investor, but it wouldn't have happened if Andrew Parker hadn't have put his hand in his pocket and funded buying the business out of administration. Andrew didn't particularly know me at the time. I just gone on doing the job that that I knew I had to do, and that started by me saying, "I'll show you how much I mean because I'm going to start off by cleaning the toilets. If I clean the toilets, I know that you'll clean the canteen. I know that we'll work in an organised way. I've always had a keen eye on health and safety because actually health and safety is caring for my staff. So
So you're a
yes,
lead by example guy. You communicate regularly. You talk to them as people. You're just one of them, but yet leading the organization. It's impressive what you're doing. You know, why do you think so many folks don't do what you do? Like, what is it? Is it because it's so hard? Is it they haven't thought about it? I mean, because what you're talking about, because it really does take an extra effort and energy what you do. So, but why do you think people don't do what you're talking about?
probably because they don't use what we've got the most of, and that's ears.
Say that again?
We need to listen to people. We've got two ears, haven't we?
Yes,
So how do we learn? Well, we learn by listening to people of all ages, of all experiences. We do self-analysis. So what are my weaknesses? I want people to tell me where I can improve. But if you think that you can't improve, then it's game over. I will never ever stop learning. Until they knock the final nail in my coffin, I
yeah,
won't stop learning. So I think that sometimes people perhaps think they're the finished article. Perhaps sometimes people are afraid that the team will go on to be better than them. I want them to be better than me.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, your confidence is high. You're not insecure about that. All great leaders would love to see their people better than them. Makes their life easy, and you want to see people shine. And it oozes out of you. I could see that with everything you're saying. You've been involved. Your work has been involved with life-changing educational organizations. And you've mentioned the idea of an invisible workforce, which I find very fascinating. Can you share more about those groups and why giving a voice and value to these folks matters so much to you?
So the life-changing education has only happened in the last couple of years, supporting my son. However, clearly when I was his age, I was also the chair of governors at 33 of the first what was called grant maintained school in Rochdale. And that was aimed at giving, at the time, my sons the best chance of education. But if you're in there doing that, then naturally you're giving other people's children the best chance of education because everybody has the right to achieve whatever they can in life. And unfortunately, too many people at school are classed as idiots. Words that have been said to me by certain people that I really respect, that's what they were told, and now they're outstanding individuals in many ways, better educated than I am. So when you see people just using these opportunities as a license to print money, I find that extremely frustrating, as does my son, which is what drove him to create that organisation. And it's really important to us that these people, we know there's untapped talent wherever you look, but unless you give them an opportunity, that talent doesn't come out. The invisible workforce part, well, the invisible workforce is actually people who are helping me to lead a business, but actually people never see. So the recent example of Tab, or if it was Vistage or anybody else, is those peer group members that people don't see, but actually they're advising me on how I can improve. So that's my invisible workforce. Now it can be a supplier. So in one of the companies that I was at, again, not my technical skill, it was fabrication company. And I brought the fabrication supplier in, the welding supplier in, and I asked them to bring the latest technology in to work with my fabricators and teach them how to use this latest technology. So I got their equipment on trial, and I said we'd buy it on the understanding that every one of my team members, for every kit we bought, got free training. That company had never come across that before, but they built their own training school. And on the back of that, they got the biggest ever contract off the Ministry of Defence. But they'd helped my team dramatically improve our output.
Amazing.
So you're bringing people with the right skill sets together. Oh, again, people don't even recognise as helping your business, but they are doing. So that's what I call my invisible workforce. I go out and I look for where's the gaps that I can't deliver and nobody internally can deliver. And sometimes we don't have to pay anything, and sometimes you have to pay a little bit. But the return on investment, because it's not cost, it's investment, is
It's
massive.
not cost, it's investment. That's the key, that what the way you're talking about it, just the way you're thinking about it changes the whole game. You're not thinking of it as a cost. It's purely an investment on your side. And it's paying you back with a really strong ROI, isn't it?
100%. Look at the transformation in Howarth.
Look at the results.
Yeah,
Results speak
2010
for
to
themselves.
2017, minus 2 million, 2018 to 2023, plus 10 million. Same people.
Wow. What's the difference, right? How you led them and how they believed in themselves and the mission. It's amazing. So, you've spoken about it, and I agree with you, obviously, 1,000% about the need to have some outside advice and all that. And the peer boards are incredible. Tab, and there's other types of organizations who do it too. But you said when you joined Tab, you did it because you wanted to understand how business owners think. So after spending time with your fellow board members, was there something that surprised you about the way your peers make decisions? And has there been anything that changed about how you now lead or advise due to the fact that you've been around these business owners in your peer board?
Yeah, I love the way they challenge me. And I don't always take their advice. And sometimes they reflect and think, you were right. And um, so initially it was very different because it felt like it was all about, it was, well, not all about, but very, very heavily weighted to the sales and the finance side.
Yeah.
And I remember one conversation when I was talking about a particularly challenging individual in the company that was about himself, but on the face of it appeared to be successful. I knew he wasn't successful, not for the business, he was successful for himself.
Mm.
I remember bringing this issue to Tab, and one of the guys who actually he was the person that I was closest to, I thought the world of him, and still do, by the way. But he said to me, Jim, we all have people like this, and we just have to put up with them. So when it came to what action are you going to take, I looked him straight in the eye and I said, it's non-negotiable. He's leaving.
He's a,
And I bumped into him a couple of years later because he left the Tab board, but he said, remember when you told me about that, Jim? I said, yeah. He said, well, I've moved mine on. It just took me 2 years. I should have listened to you. So, but I've had so much invaluable help. But this wasn't for me. This was genuinely for Howard. But I've got to be brave enough to listen to the criticism and go away and rewrite and rethink what I've been thinking. There's been some fantastic advice on authors to read, and hopefully I've given a little bit back on,
there's
from
no
my.
doubt. There's no doubt, Jim. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. My producer is going to be really upset because they're going to have to figure out because how to edit this down to the time that I'm allowed to be talking to you. But I just enjoy hanging out with you too much. So here, my wrap up question, completely independent. It's a fun one. And I'm a big music enthusiast. I go to a lot of live music. I listen to music. That's my happy spot. That's how I kind of let loose of steam. It's where I could decompress completely. Is there something, Jim, in your life, music or otherwise, that really lifts you up, keeps you going, or an interest or a hobby that might surprise people who only know you as a leader? What would that
Well,
be?
there's certainly a hobby that will surprise people. I have got a massive interest in music as well, live
Mhm.
music. I particularly like Bruce Springsteen, but there's
All
one
right.
song that I have played and played and played, and every time I'm facing a challenge, I play the track Thunder Road
All right.
because the last line in Thunder Road says, "This is a town for losers, and I'm pulling out of here to win." And I
Jim,
played it
what a
before every
beautiful way to answer
exam.
that question.
Every exam that I had in my degree, I played it. Every tough issue I've had to deal with, I've played it. There's another song that's really interesting, and that's
Tell
Zager
me.
and Evans. Zager and Evans in the year 2525, written in 1969, that talks about selecting your child from the bottom of a long glass tube, that talks about some of the stuff that is coming on. And I find that song absolutely staggering. But the real interesting thing that many people won't know is I love writing poems about all sorts of different things. And since I went into my latest chapter on the 1st of November, between then and now, I've written over 400 poems
That, well,
about all
that
different subjects.
that is incredible. We're going to have to talk about your poetry on another time. That's amazing. So thank you for being so awesome and answering that question and being on this. This has been great. Ton of fun. Like I said, I'm sure I'm way over the time, but they'll have to figure out how to edit it to what
Well,
they
I'm
need.
really
But
sorry I've took so
no, no,
long.
no. It's all on me. So anyway, so that's a wrap for today's conversation. Jim, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. It has been a true privilege. I mean, from the first moment I saw you speak to the opportunity to get to know you now and have this one-on-one conversation with you, it really means a lot to me. So thank you for that. And to everyone listening today, I hope that you found it valuable as well and have some real takeaways from Jim. And it's hopefully it's going to be able to help you lead with purpose and lead with some confidence, both in your business and your life. So with that being said, thank you, everybody. Be safe, be well, and as always, be kind. Thank you.